When you grow up in a business like that and you realize that you get better business results if you lead that way, people follow you if you lead that way. They join you if you lead that way, and they stay with you if you lead that way. And then through your career, you see people that don't lead like that. And you reflect and say, you know what, I don't want to be like that.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to this week's episode of The Conscious Capitalists with myself, Timothy Henry, and my partner in making the world a better place through business, Raj Sisodia. Hi there, Raj.
Hey, Timothy. Happy October to you. By the way, Jimmy Carter's 100th birthday today, so happy birthday, President Carter.
Oh, I love it. There's a purposeful, conscious leader. Happy birthday, Jimmy Carter. And today, we have a special guest. We have Tracey Massey, who currently serves as the Chief Operating Officer of NielsenIQ. As COO, Tracey's responsible for all commercial and product aspects, including revenue, product development plans, business unit strategies, and all market-facing aspects of NielsenIQ. Now, just for those of you that may be familiar with the name Nielsen, now it's NielsenIQ. They focus on providing consumer data and insights related to retail measurements, analytics, and consumer behavior. They track sales data, market share, pricing, and promotions across various retail channels. Now, Tracy, prior to joining NielsenIQ, served as the Global President and Chief Executive Officer of Mars Pet Nutrition, where she led the world's largest pet food business, revamping its product portfolios for continuing growth. Prior to that, she was the regional president for Mars Confectionery Americas, where she led her team through the integration of Mars Chocolate Americas with that icon in America, Wrigley's Co. Tracy has a Bachelor of Science in Chemical Engineering from Loughborough University in England, and is a published thought leader and speaker on topics such as women's success in STEM and embracing the power of diversity. A longtime friend of Conscious Capitalism. Hello, Tracy.
Hey, good to see you guys again.
Yes, wonderful to have you with us today.
Thank you.
Tracy will be speaking at our CEO Summit in October, and this is sort of a little bit of a prelude to that. Tracy, let's begin with talking about purpose, and in particular, making purpose matter. So for the listeners, it's great to have a purpose. It's a lot better to make it matter. And at Mars Pet Food, Tracy, you did a great job of doing that. And now you're at Nielsen. So let's talk about that journey. And how did Mars Pet Food define its purpose and align it with your business strategy? How did that connection work for you folks?
Yeah, so I worked for Mars for 32 years before joining NielsenIQ 2 years ago. And Mars is just a very purpose-driven company. It's a private company. It's been private for many years and has principles, and that's what we all grow up with and learn. And so it's sort of that type of behavior is embedded in everybody there, and how we operate the company. But Mars Pet Food's a really good example of purpose mattering, because when we don't just sell pet food, our vision was to make the world a better place for pets. And the reason for that is we believe pets make a better world for humans. So if you think about some of the things going on in society, depression, old age, I know it sounds horrible, but pets makes people's lives so much better. It makes them happier. They have companionship. Pets love you, whatever you do, right? It doesn't matter what you do. Like, your spouse might not even love you very much, but your pet always loves you. And they do really have a huge impact on society for people. So our purpose was to make the world a better place for pets. And so some big programs like Better Cities for Pets, trying to get access, let people have pets outside, in the office. I mean, you can the statistics show that if people have their pets with them in the office by their desk, they get less stressed, they get less emotional. It's a really amazing bond between what we would call a pet parent or a pet parent and a pet. So it pervaded everything that we did, and it was good for business. Obviously, if you're selling pet food, the more pets there are in the world, the more pet food you sell. That's the business side of it. But the purpose side, everybody that worked in that business was so focused on the purpose. They joined the business because they love pets. They joined the business because they wanted to do something that helped pets. And it was, I know it sounds silly, but retention's better because people just love what they do. They come into work every day and say, you know what? They don't say I'm making pet food. They say I'm making the world better for pets. So that's really, it was probably the best example I've ever seen in a business. That we have a bunch of them in Mars. I have them at Nielsen, but the purpose for pet food was really amazing.
Yeah, Tracy. So that story of Mars Pet Care is very inspiring. I use it when I teach about purpose as a way of expanding the domain in which you operate, right? So it's not just that it makes people feel better about their pets, but also it opened up a whole bunch of avenues, right? You had a venture accelerator, I think. You got into the collars and so forth, and working with cities to make them more pet friendly. And so talk about the scope of what that entailed. And then how that showed up. Some of those things additionally generated further revenues as well. So talk about over time and how long did it take for all of those things to start to kick in, and how much it transformed. I know it became the fastest growing division of Mars, right? That.
So if you think about it, it started with pet food. But once you say that's your purpose, then you say, right, what else do I need to do? So to your point, we made a lot of acquisitions of veterinary hospitals, because if you really want to make a better world for pets, like what better way to do that than through veterinary that take care of pets, that help them live longer. So the first big expansion was into the veterinary space. And then you can make a huge, even bigger difference, because vets, that they're not, it's a very stressful job. Imagine you become a vet because you like pets, and then you have to do things like, put them down, which is very distressing for a vet. So we obviously did a lot of programs there to try and help the vets cope with those sorts of things. And then there was expansion into other areas, into analytics, into how do you help pets even live longer. We bought Royal Canin a number of years ago, which was a high-end pet food that really it's not even food, it's medicine in food. Because when you have a pet that's in the main part of their life, they can handle most types of food. When they're in their early stages, you really need very good food for a puppy. And having scientific food is that now not everybody can afford it, so you have to have a range. But being able to have that scientific food that really, really helps a puppy, really helps at the end of their life. And then if they have a certain type of, condition, like a sensitive stomach or something like that. So Royal Canin is at that area that it's not just food. We would say it's science, where the science is in the food, again, to make the pet have a better life. So every area of a pet's life you then get into, and the business has expanded enormously as each time you look at it, each time you set your strategy, you say, right, what else can we do to make pets' lives better? And then those things come from it. So you're right, good for business and good for pets as well.
So that's a great story, Tracy, and I love that. And so having seen the power of that and being a part of an organization where that was a powerful expectation that you would lead with purpose, and then you just, you guys took it to a completely new level. You're now in a new organization, and you're in a senior leadership role and have huge influence on both the purpose and the strategy here at NielsenIQ. Say a little bit about what that transition is like for you in terms of, what do you bring to a new organization that is different, especially after 32 years?
Yeah, and you sort of probably ask, well, why did you leave after 32 years? Well, all of the conversations we were having at Mars, and I know my colleagues are having in FMCGs, the biggest FMCGs across the world, all of our conversations were about data. As we were looking at the future, how do we get data? How do we get it quicker? How do we get it more accurate? How do we make faster decisions? You win in business is if you have really good data, really good analytics, really good insights, and then you can make decisions and you want to make them quickly. So that was a lot of our conversation. And so I was like, well, why don't I move to the place that does that? That's what we do. That's literally all we do. Our role is to help our customers make better decisions, give them insights about what is the consumer doing, why are they doing it, how are they doing it, And then consumers don't always tell you the truth when you're talking to them and researching. So then what did they do? They said they would do this, and what did they do? So we have 100 years. We've been in business 100 years. We have 100 years worth of data across every single channel, every single country. We're in 90 countries across the world. All of the retail data about what people are buying, how they're buying it, where they're buying it, and what they're doing, but also the research before that says why are they doing it. So helping companies understand what consumers are doing and why they're doing it so that they can make the decisions to make their business successful. So it's a different angle because now that our role is to help our customers. That is why we exist, for our customers, and to help them to do business not just well, but the right way. So I'm sure we'll talk about, some of the things that conscious businesses are trying to do with sustainability and things like that. But we can help with all of that, not just help them do well in business, but help them do business the right way.
And how does the sense of purpose start to, or how do you land with that and connect that to this incredible capability that NielsenIQ brings to the table?
So for us, it's about how do we harness the unique power that we have to provide data-driven insights and really enable them to make better decisions, enable them to make better social outcomes, because the advances that we can give them to share in their goals of health and wellness, human development. So our purpose is about our customers and helping them, and they have their individual purposes, right? So there's not one, where it was for me, it was just pets. It's not, right? For me now, it's what does Coke want to do? What does Pepsi want to do? What does Mars want to do? What does Kellogg want to do? What does Mondelez want to do? So all of those people that are our customers, understanding their purpose and their strategy, and then using our unique ability to give them the data and the insights about their consumer to help them deliver their purpose. So it's sort of different, but our purpose now is our customer.
So one of the things that comes up, Tracy, as we talk about all of this data, and particularly one trend that's near and dear to our conscious capitalism movement, is the rise of the conscious consumerism or the conscious consumer. And I'm wondering, as you think about that topic, how do you even begin to define what conscious consumerism is? And then we'll jump into what are some of the trends that you're noticing going on there.
Yeah, so we're talking to consumers all the time, and they're telling us how they're feeling about things. So we've just launched our recent insights into, hey, what's going to happen in 2025? How are consumers feeling now? But there's a difference between what they say and what they do. So for me, conscious consumerism is what are consumers saying? And they are saying they will buy more products if they are sustainable, if they're if the company's socially good, right? So it's very, very clear from consumers that they want companies more so than government. I think you guys talk about this all the time. Consumers don't trust government. They don't. So they're putting all of their faith now into companies. Are these companies going to do the right thing for the world? And they will pay more and they will buy more if, as a company, you're doing the right things for society and also for the environment. And it's very, very clear from all of the research and from the data. So consumers tell us they would do that. And then when we put that into, okay, what are people buying? The sales are much, much higher for products that have a sustainability angle or a society angle, and not just an angle. It has to be real. Consumers now don't trust just, it says on the label. They do their research. So put it on the label at your peril, because if you put it on there and it's not true, then they will find out because they have everything, all the information at their fingertips. And what we can do with our data is we can tell that that your product, this product, sold this amount versus this product selling this amount because this one had a label on that said XYZ. So we can tell that not only are they saying they're going to buy more from sustainable and good companies, they're doing it. So the facts and the data actually, in this case, do cover what consumers say they're going to do. Sometimes, they'll say, we're going to do this, and then they don't do it because it is too. They'll say, I'll pay more for that, and then they don't. But in this situation, they do. So conscious consumerism is a big deal, and it's on the rise, and consumers are educated, and they're speaking with their wallets.
And I'm curious. I mean, one of the things that we did a couple of years ago in the UK when I was living over there was we looked at purpose in particular, and consumers, 80% of consumers wanted to buy from purposeful companies,
Yeah.
but they could only 10% of them could identify who was there. So I'm curious about your comment, like, they want to do it and they're following through. What's different today in terms of how they're able to actually identify, and what does that mean for how a company versus its products gets out there with the message that we're the good guys here. We're on the good side of this battle.
Yeah, I mean, I think information is more available than it used to be. So they are able to go onto the internet and research these companies. But companies have also got a lot of better, and that's where we help them. We help them. If they're going to launch a new package, we help them look at that package. Can consumers see what you're trying to communicate on the package? I think companies have got a lot better at getting their messaging out on their packaging. You go into a grocery store, you're not going to spend very long in front of the shelf. You're just not. So that message has to pop really quickly. And what we can help companies with is, does your packaging pop? Is it getting across the right message? Are you able to do that? So we work with a lot of small, new, innovative companies as well. We have this thing called the Pitch Slam, where they come in and they compete with their new ideas, which is really, really great. But as a small company, they don't have as much money like the big companies do to really do a lot of that research. So we're able to pare that down and help them with, if you're going to really lean into this space, does your packaging pop? Does your message come across? So I think companies have got better at that, for sure. And we can see it in the type of packaging we get across, and we can really help them just make slight changes to what they were going to do. Because, when you're not expert at that, you look at it, you go, oh, that looks great. That looks really good. And then you put it in front of a consumer, they can't tell your packaging message. So we can help them with how to get that front and center. So I think companies have got better and information is more available. And honestly, my kids are way better than I am at finding that information. It takes me forever. And they're like, they've got it straight away. So I think the younger generation, certainly Gen Z, they're way better at finding what they need, and they're not going to be fooled either. So don't make false claims; it doesn't work.
So there's nowhere to hide.
I don't think so. No, not now. I don't know what you guys see, but it definitely seems different.
Yeah, that is on the positive side, but at the same time, we're starting to see some companies back off some of these things. When they're talking about sustainability, etc., they're getting some political pushback on some of these areas. I don't know if you've observed any of that.
I think you have to do what you say you're going to do. And a lot of CEOs are actually now paid for delivering what they've said in sustainability. They're not just paid now by performance financially, they're paid by performance, environmentally and societally. And we help them measure that. So is your societal impact working? Right? Is it making a difference? So if you think about a really good example is where we help we help governments see in certain areas of the country, in certain cities, what is the type of food intake that's happening? What are people buying? Are they buying different types of high salt, high sugar? And where there aren't really good grocery stores, where people don't have the availability to go and get fresh food as much, and they're eating more packaged food, then the government's putting pressure on grocers to say, hey, open a store there. It may not make you as much money as your store over here, but you have a duty to put a grocery store in an area where people need it. And yes, they might not have as much money, but that is your duty to give them access to better quality food. So we do a lot of work, not just with companies, but with government and with agencies to help them identify what's happening and then put pressure on businesses to do the right thing. And you can't argue with the data. It's there, black and white in front of your face. So we spend a lot of time on things like that.
Do you make
and that's very rewarding for our teams.
Sure. But do you make it publicly available? Like, Gallup puts out all kinds of data that on trust in institutions and employee engagement and all the rest of it, right? Not just for their paying customers, but for the public to know. Mm-hmm. Does Nielsen do that as well? Do you put out
some of our data is publicly available. Some of the reports are publicly available. We don't make the data available. We have to be careful about what we do with the data because we have a lot of agreements. The way that we get the data, we have lots of agreements that we have to honor. So we can't just go, hey, here's the data. But what we can do is do the work on that data and then publicize the insights from that data. That's what we would make available.
Hello, everyone. Just a quick reminder that this episode is sponsored by the 2024 Conscious Capitalism CEO Summit. Are you ready to transform your business into a powerful force for good while connecting with world-class leaders shaping the future of business? Then you need to be at the 2024 CEO Summit. It's happening in October in Austin. It's an exclusive event, invite-only experience for conscious leaders ready to claim their seat at the table. And to request an invite or to nominate a peer, head to ceosummit.consciouscapitalism.org. That is CEO Summit, one word, .consciousscapitalism, one word, .org, or check the episode show notes. Look forward to seeing you in Austin in October. And I'm wondering, Tracy, we were talking briefly about, the political climate and what CEOs are saying publicly, politically correct language becoming somewhat more important these days. But as you mentioned, the underlying issue is consumers are looking for this. Yeah. And so, you've got to be responsive to what your consumers are demanding. And I'm wondering if you see a difference in the trend in North America versus what may be happening in Europe in terms of the change in customer attitude about this idea of conscious consumerism.
I mean, there's definitely a difference in where they are on their journey. And a lot of that is informed by education. So we do see differences in consumers in different parts of the world. That's one of the reasons why the data is so powerful. In 90 countries, you can help people understand, hey, the consumer here is saying this and the consumer here is saying that. And you can see the difference in the trends. For sure, there are differences. And that's what's important for people to understand. How do they really drive their business? Because they need to know the difference. What's a consumer in India doing? What's a consumer in China doing? What's a consumer in Europe doing? That's why the data is so important, because there isn't a global consumer. There just isn't. And most companies know that. So getting that data specifically for the part of the world that you're in is really, really important.
Well, one of the things that we talk about in conscious capitalism is that an organization can't be more conscious than the level of consciousness of the senior leaders. And so in many ways, you epitomize that kind of conscious leadership, both at Mars and now what you're doing at NielsenIQ. And I wonder how you would describe your journey to being a conscious leader. And maybe even beginning by stepping back and saying, do you think of yourself as a conscious leader? Is that even language that you use?
I don't use the language of a conscious leader, but I would use the language that say, I lead with purpose, integrity, empathy, which to me defines conscious leadership. I don't use that word. Maybe I could. It'd be easier than saying 3 words, right? But my journey, interesting enough, because I came up through Mars, I didn't really think of it as conscious. It was just the way we did business. There were principles. We had to be mutual. We had to be ethical. We had to, and then when you grow up in a business like that and you realize that you get better business results if you lead that way, people follow you if you lead that way. They join you if you lead that way, and they stay with you if you lead that way. And then through your career, you see people that don't lead like that. And you reflect and say, you know what, I don't want to be like that. I've seen how that makes me feel, and I don't want to be that person. I think you learn as much on your journey from people that don't lead the right way as from people that do. And then, I want to be like this person. That's who I want to be. I want people to say, hey, I love working for Tracy. And, this was the best job I ever did. And to be able to say that for me is the most powerful thing. I think, certainly the first Conscious Capitalism Summit I went to, I think it must have been about, oh my goodness, 7 or 8 years ago now. And I told you guys at the time, it was the best conference I'd ever been to. Normally you go to conferences, you watch a couple of things and then you go do some work and you get on the phone because you're busy. I sat enthralled for the whole 3 days. When I listened to what some of these companies have done, smaller companies in particular, it's so amazing. And I think when you do it because you've always done it, and then you realize the impact you can have, and then you can realize that you can have even more of an impact by getting other people to see that. I think that's certainly been my journey, a realization more than a change that you can have an impact. And you sort of don't think you sort of doing your thing, not realizing the impact you have until you step back one day and go, wow, this can make a difference. And I think that's the big power of conscious capitalism, and helping people understand, to do good, you have to do well. The two go together. Doing well in business and doing good things, they go together, and you have to have both.
And Tracy, you acknowledge the impact that the development program at Mars had, right, on your development as a leader. So it's an 18-month program. Can you talk about that? Like, how do they do it in a systematic way that awakens these things in you?
Yeah, part of it was the development program, but part of it is just the way that they develop people. So, and I tell my career story all the time. I did things at Mars that most companies would never have let me do. I had an engineering degree. I went into finance. Most people would say you can't do finance if you don't have a CPA. Well, I didn't have one. They took a chance on me, and they took the fact that I could prove that I had learning agility, and they taught me to do finance, and I became a very successful CFO. And then when I wanted to go back and run a factory, because I'd always wanted to do that, it was like my dream when I was growing up, that I wanted to run a factory. I loved tinkering with cars and things. And they gave me a chance, after 10 years in finance with no real qualifications to run a factory, they let me go back and run a factory because they needed people skills. So what Mars does really well, and what we're doing at Nielsen too, because, you bring what you've learned, is take people's core set of skills and then bring them in, stretch them. Some of the things that I got the opportunity to do scared me like you wouldn't believe. What am I doing? I can't possibly do that. But you realize when you step into things and you take a challenge that you can. So how do you push people further than they think they can give them opportunities that are bigger than they think they can do? You'd be amazed by how much they step up. And that's the Mars leadership development ethos. Give people chances, push them, give them a safety net so that, if it doesn't work, then you feel safe. You can say, okay, I tried that, didn't work. But people can do way more than even they think they can, particularly women. So I'm going to bring my diversity piece in there. Particularly women need to be pushed.
That's great. And normally when this happens, it's because you had a wonderful person you're reporting to, and they did all that for you. But you're saying that Mars has systematized that so that it's not dependent on who you're reporting to, the supervisor. That happens pretty much for everybody.
It's always dependent on your line manager to some extent, but then it's also dependent on you. So what we tell people is your development is your responsibility. We'll help you, but it's your responsibility. You're the one who has to push yourself, develop yourself. Your manager has a part to play in it too, and the company does. But the systemization is about knowing and running succession and talent panels all of the time. So running those panels systematically so you can see the talent, you can see where you can give them development opportunities, you can see where they need to learn. So there's a systematic piece in terms of how you develop. There's a systematic piece in terms of we take risks. We take risks. We know they're not always going to work, but taking the risks makes a difference. And then what happens is once it gets embedded in the organization, so somebody like me who had people take risks on them, I take risks on other people. So you can imagine it just grows because you take risk on one person, that one person takes risks on another person. Next thing you know, you've got this environment that is a learning agile environment. And that's the trick. It just takes a long time. It takes a long time to change culture. I think people say like it takes a year a layer, which is why we try and have small layers, higher spans and shorter layers, because it takes a year to get culture down to an organization, but it's got to start at the top. If the leader does not show those values and does not behave that way, you'll never get it through the organization. So it's got to start at the top. Then the trick is, how do you get it through the organization? Mars has been around for so long. They've got it all the way through. Same with NielsenIQ, like 100 years. Arthur Nielsen invented market share 100 years ago, right? It's when you've got a company that's been around for that long, and you've done it the right way, it's easier. But there's no better time to start. What do they say? There's no better time to plant a tree than today.
No. I love that, Tracy. And one of the things that you touched on that I think is really important is this idea of pushing people to their edge and encouraging them to take risks. Now, clearly, that's partly dependent on this new idea that everybody's bouncing around called psychological safety. Mm-hmm. You know, how do I, as a leader, create an atmosphere where people feel safe enough to push those edges?
Yeah.
And I'm curious, you know, what's in your toolbox when I bring that up and say, Tracy, how do you create that sense of safety in the teams where, you know, you're both hard and soft? Listen, I'm pushing you.
Yeah.
But I'm soft in the sense that, you know, it's also a safe place to land. And that sort of yin and yang that a really good leader has.
And I think it starts with building relationships. You know, if you get to know your people really, really well, get to know what matters to them really, really well, so that you know them as a person, it's got to start with that trust, and you have to build trust. So building that through relationships is really, really important. And then demonstrating in the way that you behave. So when you say, hey, I really want you guys to tell me what you think, I really want you to give me feedback, then you have to ask for that. They're not going to just give it to you. So continuously asking for it, continuously making it safe. When they tell you something you don't want to hear, right? Making it safe. Okay, I didn't really like that. That's not a great result, but okay, we got to work with it. So how you respond, how you ask them to behave, and then how you respond when they do it is really, really important. And then what happens is people get comfortable. And especially when you've got a large team, if one person does it and it works, and then the next person does it and it works, and they're still here and they're still doing okay, then people start to go, okay, they're serious. But they're gonna try and test you. You have to do what you say you're gonna do. So it's about asking for it, being open and being receptive. And then when you take that data, so like we have, just say you have a problem in the business, right? Something's not working, you have a problem. Encouraging people to speak up about that problem and then fixing the problem. What I always say to my team is, we cannot fix what we don't know is going wrong. You will know what's going wrong. So if you're going to sit there and just not say anything because you're scared to tell me it's not working, then I can't fix it. So that's the other thing, right? So they tell you there's a problem, you listen to it, and then you fix it. And if you don't follow through, your words mean nothing. So that would be my sort of biggest message. That's a broad message, but you can take it through to specific examples and see how that builds. But you have to have people trust you, and they have to know that when they put their hand up and say, hey, this isn't working, that you're not going to jump on them, and they feel safe doing it. Then they push themselves, right?
No, I love that. And, you know, you touched on the diversity question. And, you know, in many ways, you know, I think we're in a period where maybe women leaders are actually better at building this trust, and they're better at this kind of empathy, and they're better at building teams. And we're now starting to see data that actually suggests that that's true. And I'm curious, from your position, how do you help those younger women leaders step into taking the risk side? Because they may have some natural advantages that are evolving for all kinds of reasons. But the other part is stepping in and taking risks and doing that. So I'm curious, how do you coach some of the young women leaders that you work with to find that balance of being themselves and stepping into taking those kinds of risks?
Yeah, you know, it's hard. And actually, NielsenIQ is very good at it. So when I came in, I mean, they're way over 50% senior females. That The amount of women in leadership in NielsenIQ is unbelievable. So they've done a really good job. Before I even came here a couple of years ago, amazing. But what matters to young women, same as it matters to ethnic diversity, and what matters to any type of diversity is being able to see people at the top that look like you. And having enough people in your organization that look like you. At Mars, we did a really nice job. We were nowhere near where NielsenIQ is, like not even close, even though it had been an absolute, mission for years, because it takes time for women to get through. And you lose them at critical times in their lives, like when they have babies. It just happens. It's got nothing to do with the company. Women have babies, and some of them decide they don't want to be in the workforce anymore, and that's perfectly fine. Whether you're a woman that decides to stay home with children or a woman decides to work, both avenues are perfectly fine. What's not fine is people making you feel bad about your choice. And that's probably the biggest thing I think all of us can do. And the sad thing is, when you look into why people make those choices to leave the workplace, it's normally because of family and friends and the other ladies in the school parking lot that make them feel bad. It's not the workforce. It's the workplace. So all you can do is build communities where you can surround them and give them help and advice. I've got 3 children. They're all fine. I worked my whole life. There's nothing wrong with my children because I worked. But was it easy? No. Because, my father was disgusted that I went back to work because he thought women should stay at home. But so you have to get through that. And particularly in Latin American countries, that family, thing is really, really strong. So I think what you need to do is build the communities where they can talk to other people that experience what they experience. Because when you're feeling really bad and you can talk to someone else that's been through it, that helps an awful lot. So support to make those choices, and then also pushing them, because women do have lots of natural strengths that make them better leaders, like empathy. They are more empathetic. They just are. But they're not as pushy or as confident or as strong, because growing up, and the psychology matters, growing up, little boys are told, hey, you can do everything, and little girls are told, go sit back down there, right? That's just not everybody, but on the whole, the averages are that way. So knowing that they need to be pushed that little bit harder and saying to them, hey, you're damn good. Don't let anybody talk you down. Don't let anybody else say they're better than you, because they're not, because you are. So it's this balance of really understanding where they're coming from. But if they can't see it, they can't be it. So, and you need enough of them. So if you have 1 or 2, that's just not enough, because they don't look around and have people to talk to. So you've got to get that mass of people that young women feel like, this is great. I've got other young women around me. They're succeeding. I'm not, and I don't hear this as much anymore. When I was coming through the workforce and it was very male dominated, it would be, oh, those women, they're pushy or they're bolshy. The names people used to describe women weren't very nice. I don't hear that anymore. Like, successful women were called names. That doesn't seem to be nearly as it just doesn't happen as much. But until enough of us get up in the workforce, and there still aren't enough of us, right? There's not enough CEOs are female. There's just not. Now, you still have to be a good CEO. You can't just be female. You have to be a good CEO. So we've got to bring women through. We've got to put the development programs in place, and we've got to give them the opportunities. And gradually over time, they will rise to those positions and they will run companies well. And I'm not saying men don't, because there are many men in senior positions that have great empathy. It's not as natural as for a woman. So women have it more naturally, men have to develop it. But there are many, many men that I've worked for that are amazing empathetic leaders. So I don't want to pull that distraction. But there's 50%, when people say to me, one of the things we did at Mars is we made them interview candidates, and you had to have enough of a slate of female candidates. So people would, especially the agencies that help you hire people, they'll say, oh, sorry, we just couldn't get any women candidates. That's nonsense. There's 50% women in the workforce. Go get me a slate. Get me a 50-50 slate. I want to see 50% men, 50% women in my interview slate. And I'm not going to accept no. And in some jobs, that's really hard, because there's not as many female engineers, right? There's not as many women working in Latin America, as an example. So the easy way for a recruiter is to say, sorry, I can't get you a slate. You have to say, not acceptable. Give me a 50-50 slate. They must be out there. Go find them, because they are out there. And we just have to be, I think we just have to be more intentional about finding the candidates than we've been. That would be, for me, the biggest impact everybody can make. Equal slates, go find them. They're out there. There's 50% of the workforce. Don't tell me they're not there. They're there. Bring them in, develop them. And to your point, the stats say businesses do better under female leadership. Maybe because there's just not so many of them, so the good ones move the stats. I don't know, but
selection bias.
There are many real factors that contribute to that, and men have to cultivate that so-called feminine energy, right? And that's within all of us. So it's music to our ears.
And it's the same with all diversity is the same. It's not just female diversity. It's the same for every single area of diversity.
I love your passion and your clarity on all of these subjects, but especially this last one. So thank you for the work you're doing. And we look forward to seeing you in a few weeks now in Austin and continue the conversation there. So thank you for being with us.
Looking forward to seeing you guys. I'm very excited. It's my favorite time of the year is the Conscious Capitalism Summit. So very excited to come.
Well, we'll love to have you there. And I loved your words about female leadership as the father of a daughter in her late 20s now and trying to coach her through leadership challenges that she's facing. I'm sure she'll love to listen to what you've said today. And thank you for the inspiration you provide in that regard. And the example that you are.
Thank you.
We'll look forward to seeing you at the CEO Summit in October in Austin, Texas. And
excellent.
For you, our listeners, if you enjoyed today's podcast, you can, whatever channel you're on, hit the subscribe button. And we always love it if you go over to Apple Podcast and you decide to give us a score or give us some feedback. We always enjoy hearing what you have to say. And thank you for Conscious Capitalism, Inc., who is our sponsor of this, and for Rainbow Productions, who helps us produce this each week. And again, thank you, Tracy. It was wonderful to have you.
Thanks. See you soon.
Thank you.